Talking about fashion history with Kate and Heather at the Grand Costumier. Grand Costumier, Grand Costumier, Grand Costumier.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Heather Lou here of Closet Core Patterns. We've got a really exciting video today. We are going to be talking about vintage denim, the history of kind of denim and how it kind of entered modern wardrobes. And if you stick around to the end, we're going to teach you some tips for kind of identifying actual vintage denim when you're thrifting. And here to talk to us about all of this is Kate Lessard, who is the Grand Costumier at the Grand Costumier. So she's basically the head of this incredible costume department, warehouse, heaven, playfield that we're in right now. And Kate could you tell us a little bit about your kind of background? Because you have a very deep fashion history.
I'm a costume designer. So I graduated from Le Conservatoire d'Art Dramatique de Québec. So I'm originally trained as a costume designer, but also a set prop lighting designer. From that point on, I really worked in the field mostly for the stage. And then I went on in teaching fashion history for more than 12 years. And then from that point on, I started working here first as an assistant, then as a costumiére. And now I really run both the collection itself, so archival organization, but also overviewing all the rental department.
Yeah, we're in a massive building right now. It's 5 floors of costumes right now. I am looking at leather Roman armor behind me. We've got kind of military costumes. Like, the depth of this collection is really exciting. And so we're here to talk to Kate about denim. You know, this is a pretty timeless video, but we did just release a new jean pattern that was inspired by the 90s called the Chloe jeans. And so we were excited to talk to Kate about kind of denim and how they entered our wardrobes. And, you know, it's become this very important part of kind of North American Western everyday wear, would
Absolutely.
You say? Could we talk, kind of start with where jeans came from? Like, where, in terms of where they entered our wardrobe?
Where they entered our wardrobe, we see it happen a bit in the 50s when we think about like James Dean and so on. But really where it becomes ubiquitous.
And outside of like a workwear context.
Exactly. It's really in the 70s. So in the 70s, we have the sailors that are wearing these really, really, really tight woven denim that is also essentially waterproof.
And it's waterproof because it's so tightly woven.
Exactly.
And maybe it's saniforced or whatever. They may be doing some treatment on it.
Exactly. And they have also bell bottom, so that when they are on ships, if there's a bunch of water coming in, they can raise them up and they're going to stay up. Funny enough, these were also made so that if they went overboard or they were planning on going overboard, these could actually be wrapped around and kind of inflated with water, and they would provide a little bit of like support.
Yeah, your assistant was showing us how they kind of filled this with air, and that would help them presumably survive in the ocean for some short period of time.
Exactly.
Where I feel like modern jeans, you would just sink like a stone. They would just absorb all the water and you'd be dead instantly.
Absolutely, and they would like strangle you with the stretch. So in the 70s, well, late 60s, early 70s, the hippies, they go into warehouses and they go into thrift store and they
army
find
surplus.
An army surplus. Yeah. And they find these. So what's interesting with this pair is that we even have like the old military tags.
So this says Seafarer.
Seafarer. So that's the brand that makes them. And we have the embroidery of the person who probably wore them. So the hippies, they take those and it becomes, you know, part of their uniform, part of their everyday wear.
So why would they have been shopping at army surplus? Like, what was the kind of...
There's this idea of like not wanting to go towards, you know, the big machine of capitalism and going back to a way that would be more like communal. So going into those thrift store, that's what they find, right?
And like having, you know, creativity and personal expression, just like I think right now thrifting's never been bigger than it is right now. And I think like a lot of I'm not going to use the word youth, but I like you read all these trend pieces about Gen Z, like being these crazy thrifters. And I think that's a big part of it too, is like cost of living is really high. They want to express themselves. They don't want to necessarily go into a store and look like everybody else. They want to go and like curate this wardrobe that feels unique to them.
This aspect of personalization, I think, is really, really important. And especially with the hippies, they don't want to go and look like the clean cut, 1960s version that the world is telling them that they have to be, working in an office, having, short hair and like anything that's done the same with polyester. Also, I think that's an interesting thing, wanting to go with things that are natural as part of that.
So where would we go? So if we're kind of starting here, where is it going fashion wise?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So then you have these that are the original. And then more fashion brands, they pick up on this idea, and then they start making some that are fashionable, but they will share the same characteristics, right? So we want them really, really tight hugging at the hips.
High-waisted.
High-waisted. Often the fly is not going to be a zipper. It's often going to be snaps. This one's a zipper, but we'll have snaps like that, or like really button fly. And we want to have this elongated look. So often you'll have yokes that are triangular to really kind of like emphasize this long line. And even like if we look
I cannot imagine anything that would look worse on my tummy than this yoke. But in the back, obviously, that yoke is like, this is like the most classic, denim detail.
Exactly.
But here it's really normally the yoke is a lot narrower, but here we're seeing it come down. There's no back pockets, right? So they don't have to worry about any kind of.
Exactly. No bulk in the pocket. And even if we look at like the depth of that back seam, like it goes really high up.
I mean, this is that scene in Dazed and Confused where she's trying to put her jeans on and she's got a piece of pliers to pull them up.
Exactly. Or like my mom used to say that she used a fork.
Oh my God. So, you'd have to have a really strong fork.
Exactly. But like lay on your back, on your bed, trying to like.
And this is all like 100% cotton. And I remember that before we started seeing, which we're going to talk about a little bit when spandex starts getting added to jeans, I remember you always bought your jeans a size small because cotton stretches out. So if you're going to wear your jeans that tight, they are going to end up getting a little bit of ease with your wear. So you want to kind of get them too small and conform them to your body. What I find so fascinating with this leg shape is that it actually came from sailors. Like, I don't know how much we kind of realize that. So speaking of personalization, right? So we're taking these styles. So whether or not you're getting them at Army Surplus or, you are actually buying a ready-to-wear pair, what starts happening is...
really the desire of making it your own. So we have embroideries, we have patches, we have drawings like by hand on it. And then you'll even like having making it work when it's not your size. Oh yeah, I love the little mushroom.
Oh my God, the little mushroom.
And like these, you can really see that this is handmade with love by let's say it, probably our youth, right?
Well, somebody who's experimenting with psychedelics, most likely.
Yeah, probably.
I love this little detail, though, of making these fit.
Because, again, they're thrifting, so they're making it work with whatever they can find. So you'll have these details. I love also, it was probably original, but then you have all these this top stitching that is red. That really like stands out.
And this little red button. I just want to show like the needing a little bit of extra room at the center back and just inserting a little wedge and then putting the belt loop on it on the center front. I think that's such a smart way. I mean, these would have fit me when I was 9, but they're so cute.
Well, because there's also this idea of still the beauty standards, right? We have this mannequin next to us that is an actual 1975 mannequin, so we can see that even though it's tiny, it has really, really small features.
Small boobs. This is like an A cup.
Exactly. But when we're looking at the jeans itself, we can see how it's really leads itself to showing us all these long lines, and even with the martingale onto the side, so
adjust the size.
You can make it as tight as you want.
And this pocket detail, like we've been seeing this in fashion for the last 5-6 years, like on denim, where a lot of the times with jeans, maybe you just have the pocket detail, but you're not seeing this top stitching. But this detail, I think, has really come back where it's either like an applied patch pocket that they're top stitching, or you're like highlighting the shape of the internal pocket bag.
We'll see that happening in the 90s, but then we're going to want to give it more and more space.
Well, let's get into that. So moving into the 80s.
Exactly.
I can just see as I'm pulling these hangers, like, so now we've just gone fully in the other direction in terms of leg silhouette. We went from bell bottom to really tapered. And I remember my brother in the 80s when preppy was huge. And he wanted to look like all the rich kids he went to high school with. And you would you couldn't sometimes even get jeans that were tight enough. So he would take his 501s that have a straight leg, and then you would like peg them and then roll them really tight to try to get them as tight as possible. It was like the 80s version of skinny jeans.
Exactly. So when we talk about the fact that fashion is a pendulum, right? Usually every decade is going to react to what happened before.
Well, we're seeing it happening right now, right? We had skinny jeans for 10 years, and now all anybody wants to wear is wide leg.
Or even the return of the bell bottom.
Yeah.
So when we get to the 90s, this really tight hip hugging figure, we don't want that anymore. We want a lot of volume. So we'll see there's a lot more room here, and often we'll have some pleating at the top or very interesting like cutout detail, and lots of room for that.
But the leg is really tight, but then there's way more volume in the waist. Like even the back pocket on this is darted.
Exactly.
So this probably ends up having like a little bit of shaping too. And then obviously we're looking at like not only acid wash, but pink acid wash.
Exactly.
So start
like
experimenting.
Over dyeing. That can also be done at home. And then you have also, you know, all the prints, all the printed denim. I love.
Oh, I thought
I
I got confused because for a minute I thought it was a Gap label. And when I was growing up, Guess, forgive me, was like the jean, right? It was like Anna Nicole Smith, and we were too poor and I couldn't afford them, and I felt
these
very...
are Santana. So Santana was also a very, very big brand that became super big in the 90s later. So yeah, seeing that leg also that's quite wide at
in the thigh.
At the thigh. And then at the bottom, we want to make it tight. So we also even add zippers. To really emphasize this.
I mean, it's a wild shape because it's almost balloon, but then it gets so narrow through the ankle. Such an interesting silhouette change from one decade to another.
Is that the 90s?
Well, this looks like a real pair of mom jeans.
Yeah, a real pair of mom jeans. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Here we're getting into the 90s. There's something that's really more sturdy.
Yeah, this is really heavy denim.
Because when we get into the 90s with the grunge, we have again this idea of going back to the thrift store and to the dead stock material and using things that are actual workwear.
This is so heavy. This feels like a 14-ounce denim, if I had to guess.
And like
no stretch at all. But here we're starting to play a little bit with design details. So there's like an applied patch to that yoke. Here,
I love the little pocket here that again is really reminiscent of like workwear, like the hammer like belt.
Here we've got like a drop front yoke and then this pocket stepping down here. These are Gerbeau François. Never heard of this brand before.
So that's what's fun here. We have a bunch of brands that are very unique, right?
Maybe it was a Quebecois brand, or maybe France, I guess.
Maybe, that's possible.
Okay, here we go. Oh, wow. Is it a jean or is it a jodhpur? Am I going horseback riding?
Well, you have a lot of that in the like late 80s and early 90s. All this, again, idea of it being not quite fashion, but taken from like this horseback riding as like a hobby. Also, I think a status symbol in a way, owning a horse.
I definitely remember the leggings with the kind of applied patches going into a riding boot with like a button-down shirt. Was very like Ralph Lauren in the 90s.
Exactly. And then we still see this desire to have a lot of volume with the pleating.
Oh God, a jean pleat. It's a hard look. And then this one has no back yoke at all. It's being shaped with darts. This label is really fun though.
Exactly.
Gang.
So I think that when we talk about how to thrift and how to know if it's vintage, we'll cycle back to this idea of looking at the tag.
Stonewash. Now this is even getting a little bit lighter. Well, here this looks like a...
Here we're really going into the 90s, 90s grunge with this overwashed and over délavé.
Well, it's Levi's 516.
And so the leg is quite wide. You'll have, again, all the marking of workwear. So like the ochre top stitching. Like there's no actual fashion detail, right, on this pocket. Everything comes from workwear.
This is as classic as a pair of jeans is going to get. Where I think you're going to see shifts is, like the color. What kind of distressing or washing they're doing. Maybe the yoke, you're going to shift. Maybe the pocket proportions, or it's going to be really subtle changes. And obviously with Levi's, we saw this in the last 5 years. Everybody was going back, getting 501s. 514s. That's the Montreal postal code. 501s, and then realizing like a lot of people didn't fit into them. So then there became this whole secondary market of taking vintage Levi's from the 90s and then tailoring them to fit. And then it took Levi's a couple years to get caught up, but then they started kind of reissuing these styles. So this is like my favorite. I love 501s. I wear them all the time.
And seeing also a desire to have visible rips.
Yeah.
I think that really plays into a lot of like the grunge movement and the blending of gender differences. Those would be worn by women and by men in the 90s.
This was my big thrifting decade. So when I was in my teens in the 90s, I was going to Value Village, and I shopped just as much in the men's department as I shopped in the women's. And like, this is very and the fact that it's all come back, I actually find I find it comforting, not alienating.
If I can, go on that, in the 90s, as we went thrifting also, like we have the grunge, but we have the return of like the hippie style that was kind of like, linked to the grunge culture. So I remember going to vintage store and wanting to have those bell bottoms, but not finding them. So my mom showed me how she, in the 70s, would take those skinnier jeans, open them up, and then add panels to decide to make those bell bottoms. So we can really see the circular fashion coming back. And emulating what we saw in the 70s.
Totally. And the jean pattern we released this month did something similar intentionally, where we like inserted a side panel to kind of mimic the way that we were reworking denim in the 90s. And yeah, again, I'm wondering if these were overdyed. Like, I think they might have been. They probably bought a pair of Levi's,
completely
overdyed them yellow, put all these hilarious patches on them. And this was definitely, I would have probably worn these in the 90s.
Because if we look at really like the size of the leg, that's just a normal jean.
Yeah,
right?
It's a straight leg.
Transformed to like be like a bell bottom. I think it's kind of low, but again, this idea of like making it the way that you want it to be is interesting.
So what I think is funny is we go from like this, and then as the 90s progress, and club music starts being a real thing, right? Rave culture.
Exactly. So, the 90s is like the height of the counterculture. And you'll see kind of two universes playing with that, both the skate and rap culture, but also the rave culture. That's also my generation. So we'll have these, again, super large jeans that originally are dead stock oversized, that are used by ravers, but then several companies, notably like Janko's. I think this is Mac gear. Yeah, Mac wear.
I'm loving these like multiple pockets, like so many places to put your drugs when you're your lollipops and your like glow necklaces.
Exactly, because who wants to dance with a backpack? But also this also comes from workwear, right?
Yeah, of course.
But then those companies, they catch on, and then we have a bunch of like contrasting nylon, a bit of plastic. It plays also
Velcro.
The super wide leg. There's something very alien about it.
Yeah.
So with the platforms and all the other like shiny fabric, there's really this idea of like the alien coming to like take us away.
Calgon, take me away. I'm kind of into these right now. I don't know where I'm at, that I'm kind of like, I feel like I could I think I could pull these off. Could I? I think so. Like a pair of Chuck Taylors and a t-shirt, I feel like I could pull these off.
And it's fun because it really also elongates the body.
Yeah, you look yes, you do look like a long alien species. So that's kind of late 90s. Exactly. Then I'm going to just pull a few more pairs here.
Yeah. Another version of that, but playing more into the like rap and skate and like yo culture. So it's not as wide in the bottom, but it still shares the same characteristics, a colored denim, different top stitching.
Exhaust. I remember this brand. This was like a Canada Mall brand, wasn't it?
Absolutely. But it still has, you know, the nylon element that are reminiscent of the workwear.
Well, right now, these are actually reminding me, right now I'm wearing our Rika trousers, and it's the same, this is like the contrast detail, all of this. Yeah, this reminds me very much of the pants I'm wearing right now. I love the white on the black.
And then it's not a subculture, it's a pop culture reference, but you have all the bands like...
Oh, this is giving me Justin Timberlake.
This is exactly what I'm going for. NSYNC and like including the sportswear. So you'll have all these, you know, kind of tearaway.
It's a tearaway pair of jeans, everyone.
Exactly. And the size of the pockets, and I think this is interesting to show. The size of those pockets.
Well, they're super drops, so they're going to be coming like really low down on your thigh. These are actually, I think these might be my favorite pair so far. And then the depth of this pocket scoops down so low. These are kind of amazing. I'm wondering if these would have been maybe men's jeans? What do you think? Hard to say.
It's really hard to say because, again, gender differences.
Left Eye Lopez is just wanting these. It's really giving Scrubs energy.
Love those. So that's, you know, 2000. Then I didn't pull any because we all know what they look like. But when we get into the 2010, it's the great reign of the skinny jeans. And that's really where we're starting to see more and more elastane in it.
So where would you say, would you say kind of 2000s is when elastane spandex really starts getting integrated into jeans? Because most of these that I've touched really feel like 100% cotton.
I was wearing at a jeans store. I was working at the jeans stores in 1999, 2000, and 2001. And in those few years, I really remember seeing that change. But really, once you hit 2005, there's no jeans that doesn't have any elastic.
I don't feel like I had a non-stretch pair of jeans for 15 years. Everything was tight. These, I'm like wondering where these came from. Are these like still 90s maybe?
These are still 90s, exactly.
These are Lois, which I loved Lois jeans. I love the logos on Lois.
What's really interesting here that we haven't talked yet, maybe these are not necessarily the best example, but as we're going into the late 90s and the early 2000s, you have the bell bottom, the personalization, but the waist is going to drop and drop.
They're getting lower.
And drop and drop until you have even like no waistband with visible underwear and the little...
God help us.
And the little zipper that is no longer than like, what,
it's a little 2-inch zipper.
Yeah, exactly.
I do just want to call out again, like we've got another insert here with the bell bottom. And then what I find really charming about these jeans is all the DIY repair that was done here. So these are all hand stitched. So obviously the seam had started to go and then they'd repaired it. And here too on the side seam. I just think these give such like texture. Like these really make me happy touching them. Like these, how many adventures, what happened in these jeans, you know?
Yeah, if
like,
all of these garments could talk.
I mean, like somebody got their heart broken, they smoked pot for the first time, they ran away from home. Like it's just...
And that's why, again, I'm talking about what we're doing here, but having things like that in a collection like ours is super valuable because you have something that already comes with a story that already talks about the life of that person. So that's ideal for like embodying a character.
You know what these are reminding me of? So this is another pair that's been kind of personalized. And what this is giving me is when we know everybody in the 90s refused to hem their jeans.
Absolutely.
And so you just had this filth, these where you were walking on them in the back. And that was like a sign of pride, almost like how far you could get your jeans to fray in the back.
Exactly, especially those big Jenkos we looked at with the really wide leg. I actually just bought a new pair of those and I'm waiting to hem them because I know what it means to wear them in the slush right now. And I'm saying no.
Yeah, I mean, when you live in a winter climate like we do here in Montreal, I feel like crop pants will never go to style in winter just because there's no other way to get through.
And as we go, you know, towards today, lots of black denim also, which you didn't really see really before like the mid 80s. But these are classic Levi's straight leg.
This is another pair of
to me, this is like the beginning of a grunge,
505s.
the beginning of a pair of grunge jeans, right? They start like that, and then
They end like those ones we just saw with all the
Exactly.
patches. And then as we're kind of moving back into, I think this is where we're starting to see.
exactly. So those are all 2020s.
I had these jeans. I had these jeans. It's when you wanted your jeans to feel like a trouser. They're a work jean.
It's almost like more like a chambray, right?
Yeah.
Than an actual.
Well, it's
denim.
a broken twill weave, so it's not like a classic diagonal.
Exactly.
And then it's got all these things like the welt pockets and the really deep waistband and the trouser closure.
And then we can see these. Well, these are kind of straight, but we have other version where we were really gonna see this bell bottom appearing. And I don't know if you can see, but there is so much stretch in those jeans.
Like, and do we even call these jeans? Like they're breaking all the forms, right? The zipper's on the side.
Yeah.
There's no kind of front pocket. It's made out
back
of
pocket.
denim.
Yeah.
But I remember this. I know what stores I was wearing. Like this was where you were going to get your going out tops in the mid 2000s, and then you had these.
And no waistband.
No waistband
also.
and super low. Like this is like a
Super
6-inch rise.
Yeah. Tops.
Tops like kind of
Tops.
coming up to here. Definite crack happening in the back.
And a bunch of shenanigans also with like cutouts that are just really like style lines.
Let's just put a seam line here. Why not? That's fun.
Yeah, and right in the middle with like the diagonal in the back. And those are 2020.
So now we're moving fully into, so what's fascinating if we were to find is our original pair. Okay, so this is 2020.
And this is original early 70s.
Let's turn them around. So obviously now we've got, these just are reminding me of these quite a bit. Again, this, I guess, yeah, we've got the dart. So we have the dart happening here. We have no yoke. They're really high-waisted.
On both sides, yeah.
Both sides. We've got the bell here. This bell's been created with like an inserted panel. But to me, I guess we're kind of getting into the question of when you're thrifting.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it. How are you going to see this in a store and be able to differentiate this from 2020 doing 1965?
Or 2020 doing the 90s,
Yes.
right? First of all, look for stretch. Original, even the 90s, not a lot of stretch versus lots of stretch in this. Take a look at your label. So your label is going to tell you a bunch of things. There's a little trick. In 1972, there's a CA number that any company that sells in Canada needs to have. They need to register. So in 1972, that starts with the number 1, and it goes on. And then look in the label itself for like literally the vibe of the label. So you think about the sort of like advertisement that you'll see in the 90s and in today, and that's going to really translate into your label.
Not only are we kind of looking at that number, but maybe the aesthetic of the label is going to be an indicator too.
Absolutely. So think of like the colors, the type of fonts, the type of like imagery that you'll find. That's going to be very different from today to the 70s. And is it printed on? Or is it like a woven and sewn tag? I think that gives a lot of information.
So printed would be modern and a woven tag would be vintage.
Exactly. So like if you're seeing here,
this one is actually is printed.
fair.
Yeah.
So I would look also at what's your zipper looking like. So you have, before the 70s, well, 70s and more, your zippers are they're metal, but they're like really, really sturdy. And I don't know how to explain it.
The
but
teeth are really wide.
Exactly. And you feel like you're going to cut yourself onto them. As today, it's really more adaptable and like it's smaller zipper.
Yeah, this feels like a really heavy duty industrial zipper. It is, I'm like, is it a YKK zipper?
This one I don't know.
Okay. But the pull on this feels really like strong, heavy duty. And the pull on this is much lighter. I think that's a great tip. What about in terms of like interior finishing?
I find that a lot of the 70s in the inside, it's French seams.
Or flat. This looks like a flat fell.
Or flat fell.
Yeah.
Contemporary, you're going to have like a surged. And especially 2020, not a lot of like attention to that finishing. So often just surged. 90s, you have kind of like a mix of both. Mm-hmm. When I'm looking at my bell bottom also, 2020, often that insert is done in the same material that the rest of your jean. Whereas if you find that in the 90s and in the 70s, there's something different. You can feel that it's something that was done to it rather than made with the idea of that being a style item.
Right, of course.
But I think my dead giveaway is always going to be how much
the amount of stretch
do you have in that pant.
And so how could you, I mean, like, can we get into the finer points, or if you're looking at a Levi, that you could tell the difference between Levi's from the 80s to the 90s, or is it getting a little too granular?
I think it's getting a little granular.
Yeah.
I think that doing a little bit of research about the logo itself. So you have wonderful sites that have a history of the label from each era. So often when we date here, for something that's really, really pointy, like Levi's jeans, we go back and we look at what's the logo on the button, what's the the back label.
Back patch.
Is it thick leather? Is it thin leather? Is it something else? So those are going to be my go-to points.
Amazing. So one thing that we did want to maybe add about a Levi's jean. So you like, if you're a thrifter like me, you grew up trying to find them. There's like the orange tag Levi's versus the red tab. And I remember in the 90s, I was always looking for red tab. But apparently in the 60s, the orange tag were better. They had better cuts. They were a little bit more modern, where maybe the red tag in the 60s and 70s was like the real traditional workwear.
So that's something to look out for.
And we'll include a link in the description for some of the databases where you can kind of carbon date your jeans, basically based on some of the label details.
Absolutely.
I want to thank you so much, Kate. This was really fun. I'm a denim head. I have a million pairs. And I find it really fascinating to think about how this article of clothing really evolves with us. It's become, I think, really started in American sportswear and then became so influential that it's just, jeans are just something that are considered integral to our wardrobe. And I think it's really interesting to look at the history of it and think about how it evolves with us.
Absolutely. It was really great to talk with you about it.
Thank you, Kate. Bye, everybody. If you like this, like or subscribe. We're going to have more conversations with Kate and obviously more videos coming your way about sewing and making your own clothes.